Well, thank you for joining me for another IT Wire and Alex on Tech video. Today I have with me T.S. Lim. He is the Vice President of Security for CA Technologies in the Asia Pacific Japan region. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, thank you. Well, you're my last interview for today, and I've heard the terms modern software factory and agile development and ops and even things like security, which is all really great because these are the things that you guys are focusing on. But what does security mean for you in 2017, given we live in the age of endless hack attacks, ransomware, industrial espionage, and all of the rest?
Well, 2017 had been a very exciting year for us in APJ. I think with all the events going on, what I realized was this. While we talk about security complexity, I've noticed, especially in 2017, there seems to be an increased, I would say, security fatigue in the community. I think a lot of my clients are reflecting to me.
Are they getting complacent or something? Or?
No, fatigue in the sense that they have so many vectors that's coming in, there's so many factors to consider, and they are wondering, are they any wiser in terms of whether they are now protecting their setup, their organization better? So the fatigue could be, for example, a typical SOC that you have thousands of information coming in. You have various log reports and everything coming in. So which one do you look at?
Yeah.
Do you have enough resources to actually manage that amount of information? So I think that's the complexity that they are managing with, and that has led to fatigue. So fatigue meaning they are now thinking, okay, what do I prioritize? How do I
get smarter?
Exactly.
I need AI and machine learning just to figure out what the important things are, right?
Exactly. So I noticed that quite a fair bit this year across almost all of Asia Pacific.
I mean, because of all of these hack attacks, security is uppermost in everybody's mind.
Yes.
And you just said, you see this across all of Asia Pacific, but are there any areas that are straggling? I mean, you must be getting a lot of calls from companies saying, look, we really need your help to nail this down.
Yes. Well, what we are glad to see is this. I mean, in CA, we are looking a lot at the identity and access management solutions, along with application security as well. And what we notice in the market is identity and application is moving up the CISO agenda and the CIO agenda. In the past, admittedly, identity, for example, is not high on the priority. They'll look at, for example, securing the perimeter. They'll look at in terms of setting up a SOC with, complex SIM solution and so on and so forth. So for identity, perhaps they would think, I have some kind of a password management, some kind of authentication.
And that's enough in
That's enough.
But it's not.
Increasingly, if you look at the news, more than 80% of the security events are identity related.
And some of them, of course, nowadays internal as well.
Especially so.
Yeah.
Whether external or internal, and internal threats are obviously there. And a lot of these are identity related. It's exactly the area where CA have seen years ago, which is why we pick an area around especially identity to look into. So for us in CA, I would think that all this, in fact, it goes very well for us because that's exactly what we look at in the bigger scheme of things and why identity and access management is an important area. And I think increasingly for us, we see CIOs and CISOs coming to us to talk a lot more about this area.
Now, I heard the stat that it costs 30 times more to fix a security issue after you've created your app, or done whatever you've done, rather than dealing with it at the very beginning and having it as an integral part of your development process. So, I mean, what are some of the other themes and topics that have been specifically talked about on security at this CA World 17 event and on the show floor, which is, I can see, packed with partners and customers?
Yes, absolutely. You will see quite a bit during CA World, we talk about shifting left. It's about building security as an integral part of the development process. It's putting in security up front, not as a bolt-on, but integral part of the entire life cycle. I think that's increasingly what we see. So it's not about just response. I think you have heard as well, some of the speakers have talked about, a lot of attention was on detect, on response, and so on and so forth. But I think that if that's the case, the cost of recovery is tremendous, as you have heard, right? It's about how do you inbuild security up front. And again, as a integral solution, and you have heard it many times, as a modern software factory, in different part of the whole life cycle, when do we put security in? And more so as early as possible. Part of the design, part of development, and not as an afterthought, not as a bolt-on.
It's not just the modern software factory, it's the modern security factory.
Oh, I like that terminology already. Very nice, Alex. I might steal your idea and use that. I'll quote you there. I'll use the idea from you. Thank you for that.
That's all right. So, what else should we know about security? How is it going to evolve over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, if you see how security will look like in the past, in the next 5 or 10 years, look at perhaps 10 years ago. You know, what has happened?
I mean, we didn't have biometrics as such, except in James Bond movies.
That's
Maybe in
right.
10 years we'll be authenticating with brainwaves or something.
I think you're watching too much movies.
Yeah.
I think if you look at it, 10 years ago, you know, what did we see or think about then, and what is the reality now, right? 10 years ago, we would not imagine how big smart devices will become, mobility, right, and security around mobility. We will not realize how big data would become. We wouldn't realize how hot AI would be as a topic. And 10 years ago, you wouldn't imagine Trump becoming president as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
The world has changed dramatically.
so the world dramatically, right? So frankly speaking, if you ask me now, looking into the crystal ball and what 10 years would look like, it's anybody's guess, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking
Sure,
of.
please.
I think a few realities will might happen. One, I think we might move from Internet of Things to become Internet of People, right? Where I think you might have heard of this term, Internet of People, increasingly so. Because I think it is...
Actually, I haven't. I mean, normally you talk about internet of hackable and crackable things, which is coming back to the whole security point. But of course it makes sense. I mean, humans will have all these devices, or they'll even be implanted with technologies, and internet of people. I mean,
Especially.
yeah.
So, which is why I think 10 years from now, I would think you will move from IoT to IOP, where it is about behavioral. You know, people, we are creatures of habit as well, and we're so dynamic. So that is the part where I think technology will move towards, rather than being user behavioral analytics kind of stuff, it will move to become behavioral centric, where the way we develop technology would really consider upfront what social and human behaviors will be, how reactions might be, and build that into the development process. So in 10 years from now, I think that will become one area. I think we must also look at security not just in isolation as a technology issue. I think very much so the social, economic, political landscape will also affect how security will manifest, right? I'll give you one example, right? 10 years from now, China, for example, as a country, might potentially become the economic number one, might surpass US. What's the implication, right? Would it lead to, for example, cyber warfare, due to political reasons? And again, that will create a security landscape quite differently, right?
I mean, some people say it's happening right now.
Well, as we speak, there are cyber terrorism and all that kind of things. But I think once the balance of power will shift in the coming 5 or 10 years, that will have implication. Technologies coming out of China as well, for them as a power play in that sense as well, in terms of how that balance from technology coming out from the US. So I think there are going to be various trends that will happen. So if you look at the crystal ball, I think 10 years from now, some of these factors, macro factors especially, will affect security and how technology, as well as how we approach it, will manifest. So as I said, I think social behavior will be one key part of it, but political and social implication, economic implication will obviously affect quite a fair bit of it as well.
And you do hear of experiments that people are doing in trying to see how people type things on their phones, or use, or even look at their devices as additional biometric factors that we haven't, at the moment it's fingerprints and face detection with the new iPhone 10, and yet, the way that you type or type on the keyboard, I mean, I've read about these things in tests, but they haven't been implemented. Just like it's taken 10, 20 years for face detection, it might take another 10 or 20 years for these other factors, and it'll be fascinating stuff.
You're exactly right. I mean, look at obviously the new iPhones that came out with facial recognition and all that. How long it has taken for that to happen? There's only one aspect, also called physical security. So if you need to input user behaviors into cybersecurity solution, that's going to be complex. It will take potentially 10 years or more to reach to that level. And it will continue to evolve because humans are adaptive. Once technology comes out, and obviously the bad guys will be thinking, how do I overcome that as well? So it's going to be an ongoing challenge.
It's an ongoing cat and mouse game of cyber warfare between the bad guys and the good guys.
Absolutely.
That's not going to change in 10 years.
Absolutely. Indeed.
So one of the questions I like to ask as we get towards the end of the interview is always to change gears and see if you can please share what would have been some of the best advice you've received to help you get where you are today.
Oh, wow. I I think one of my life events that really affected me was when I was very young. Not a happy story. My mom passed away when I was 7.5. So that as a young kid, right?
It's devastating.
Devastating. I mean, some of the things that what does a 7-year-old know and all that, but yet it obviously affected me quite a fair bit. And that taught me a lesson in life: never to take things for granted. So that was valuable to me, right? At a very young age, I lost someone very dear to me, and from then I really know that things I have to really cherish. I can't take things for granted. I am very contented with what I have as well. I learned contentment at a very young age, and therefore I obviously will work hard, cherish every day. So these are valuable lessons which I've really helped me quite a fair bit in my life.
And given that parents really create a sense of security for their children, this could well have been something that led you to this path, if not subconsciously.
I think you're right. I never looked at it that way before, but I think some of my paranoia, being insecurity, absolutely. My paranoia is balanced by obviously having that logic as well to balance it and not going overboard as well. Obviously having the knowledge of what we are doing to protect, and to do in security, obviously that helps me. But yes, you're right. I think what happened to me in my younger days may have really shaped me to what I am today. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, they say in the first 7-8 years, you can, that's when children learn a lot. They soak up. It's the next 7 years as well is a hugely important time. And that second set of 7 years of your life was without your mum, so it would have been very difficult. So
Indeed.
Sorry to hear it. So what would be your final message to IT Wire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers?
Sure. I think it will continue, like what you say, to coin what you said, a cat and mouse game for a long time. The more connected we are, the more we get
more valuable data that's sitting there that hackers want.
Right.
Has never been richer data on each of us.
Increased platform, right? It could be, as I said, Internet of Things, but moving on to Internet of People, things around us that the knowledge and content is all around us, right? And yet the scary part is this, right? While we are trying to get solutions to address all this, there are going to be different things coming on, and the skill sets in the market that will help us to address all this is trying to keep up. Just think about it. It will take months, perhaps weeks for you to come up with a new way of attacking a particular system. Yet to develop skill sets to address it, for someone fresh from college out to training and all that, will take years. So it is not a balanced game. It's not a level playing field, right? So to speak, the bad guys are having a head start in all this, shorter time to market, I would say. But yet for us to build the skill sets to achieve that, tough, right? So increasingly, I think we need to address issues around efficiency, around, for example, automation, the use of intelligence as well. I think all this will really be what will shape things to come.
And companies often talk about a skills shortage. Is CA doing anything on a global basis to help universities or younger people really get into security and come and work for CA rather than the bad guys or somebody else?
Well, I think as an organization, we are definitely creating awareness across, not just in schools and colleges, but I think we are reaching out, obviously, the community as well, right? I think the temptations will be there, right? We do not
you guys have hackathons as well, which are
capture
good.
the flag, hackathons and things like this. I think increasing awareness is one thing, but I think it's an ongoing race, as you say. It's an ongoing battle. We'll do our bit, obviously, to educate the market. We'll do our bit to continue to listen to the market, and also to stay ahead as much as possible.
Well, T.S. Lim, VP of Security for APJ CA Technologies, thank you very much for your time, and hope to talk to you again in the future.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.